Hello, and welcome to Nico's guide on how to build items when you first start a match. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, what do I buy? Well, you have to think about what character you're playing. The 5 free gods that any person who's made an account right now are Ymir, Odin, Neith, Poseidon, and Ra. There are 5 other free gods that are in the current free rotation that changes every 2 weeks. Most of the time it's every 2 weeks. It's really whenever a major patch that introduces a new god into the game is when the free rotation changes. The free rotation now is Apollo, Freya, Odin, Sobek, and Guan Yu. The Odin is there in case you did not make an account now, but you made an account earlier where Odin was not a part of the permanent 5 free gods. Now, depending on who you pick, you will build different items. First off, you should probably turn off auto buy because auto buy isn't that good. Auto buy gives you a meditation and sprint. Meditation, not a very good active item. There are a ton of active items, and meditation is usually one of the last ones you want to buy. Sprint and isn't terrible, it just buying it automatically in the beginning of the game is not recommended, and you should really turn that off because it limits what you can actually buy. Also, you really shouldn't be buying active items right as you get into the game. You should really wait until you go back to your base the first time to buy an active item to really know what you're going to buy. We'll get into that later. Today I just want to focus on what kind of boots you want to get and what starting items you should get. So, depending on what character you picked and how you're going to play that character, you would buy one of these 5 starting items. A jungler would start Bumba's Mask because it helps you jungle. When in the jungle, you gain 15 MP5. You're also healed for 10% of any jungle camp monster's maximum health. If you have an ally nearby, you get the normal gold reward as if you were solo. It's a very good item for junglers. Actually, it's an item that you need to get if you're going to jungle. A tank would build Mark of the Vanguard. I say build, but it's just a one-time buy. You get 5 physical protection, 5 magical protection, 100 health, and all the damage you take is reduced by 5. A physical carry in the left or right lane may or may not get Death's Toll, which gives you 15 physical power, 90 health, and 3% more attack speed, and hitting an enemy with a basic attack restores 5 health and 1.5 mana, which is good to sustain early on in the game. But some characters can benefit with just buying level 2 Tabi instead of buying a Death's Toll. It really depends on the character you're playing as. Vampiric Shroud is for mages who usually end up going in the mid lane because it requires you to last hit enemies. And what it does is it gives you 20 magical power, 100 health, 5 MP5, and killing an enemy restores 10 health and mana. So this requires last hitting and is usually best if you're a solo lane, a magical solo lane, or you're mid laning. And last item that was introduced recently is Watcher's Gift. Watcher's Gift gives you 100 health, 10 HP5, 5 MP5. And the passive is when a friendly god kills a lane minion near you, you also gain the last hit bonus. Also, your gold per 5 is increased by 1, which means as your carry is getting last hits from maybe trying to stag a Heartseeker or Devourer's Gloves, you are also getting the gold as if you were getting last hits. Now, after you buy a starting item, depending on what you want to buy, tanks usually buy Mark of the Vanguard, physical ranged carries usually buy Death's Toll, a mage that goes into a solo lane either on the left, I shouldn't say left lane because it's no longer left and right lane, it's more short lane, long lane, and also Fire Giant and Gold Fury lane, but a mage that goes into the short lane or mid lane will usually get Vampiric Shroud, and then a jungler will get Bumba's Mask. Now, you're probably wondering, well, what shoes or boots or whatever you want to call them do I buy? Depends on the god you're using. Greaves are for tanks. Level 1 Greaves gives you magical, physical protection, and HP 5, and gives you speed. You're probably wondering, well, okay, level 1 is good, but what is this whole splitting at the top thing? Well, all boots split into 2 different tiers at level 3. Greaves become reinforced greaves, and plated greaves. Tabi become warrior tabi and ninja tabi. Shoes become shoes of the magi and shoes of focus, and boots become boots of celerity and Midas boots. Let's see what these all do. Reinforced greaves give you 25 physical protection, 25 magical protection, plus 15 HP 5, and one of the unique things about boots is that they give you a certain amount of speed while in and out of combat, or at least the greaves do, and they do not stack with other boots, so it does not make sense to buy more than one set of boots. But they also have other passives, like the reinforced greaves resolve 30% reduction to all crowd control durations, which means you will be stunned for 30% less time, which is very good if the enemy team has a lot of CC. Plated greaves give you the same amount of physical, magical protection and HP 5, but the passive is all damage taken is reduced by 5%. So you're probably wondering, well, what do I pick? Do I pick reinforced or plated? It just depends on what's on the enemy team. If the enemy team has a Ymir, Thor, Agni, and that's about it really. If they have 3 people on their team that either have stuns or some type of hard crowd control, like a stun, a taunt, a silence, a fear, you're going to want to get reinforced greaves as your tanking item. Now, Tabi have 2 different tiers. The passive on Warrior Tabi is you gain 15 physical penetration, which is really good in the early game. Ninja Tabi give you 7% critical strike chance. They both give the same amount of physical power and attack speed at their end, plus 30 physical power and plus 9% attack speed. It is pretty unanimous that you want to always get Warrior Tabi and not Ninja Tabi. The reason behind this is the physical penetration that you get early on in the game is really beneficial because physical penetration means you do more damage through an enemy who's trying to build physical protection. Penetration basically means it deducts the amount of protection that they're using, and they take more damage depending on how much penetration you have. The 7% crit doesn't really do much and is really random and doesn't help you. All of the pro players and people who've played Smite for a very long time agree Warrior Tabi is a way and a head better than Ninja Tabi, and unless they do something to make Ninja Tabi more viable, it's never a good idea to get Ninja Tabi, even on characters that have good crit chances like Artemis and Naja. It's just always better to get Warrior Tabi for the physical penetration. Shoes, on the other hand, is kind of different. It's kind of split evenly what you want to get. Shoes of the Magi give you 50 magical power, 250 mana. The passive is that you gain 15 magical penetration. Shoes of Focus give you the same amount of magical power and mana, but the passive is you gain plus 15% cooldown reduction. The reason it's kind of split on Shoes of Focus and Shoes of the Magi is because there's a bunch of items that give you good magical penetration already, so people are saying, well, not people are saying, but most of the time it's a good idea to get Shoes of Focus because you get to spam your abilities more. The cooldown reduction is very good, and most mages have area of effect abilities that do damage over time, aka, well, not damage over time as much, they do damage as an enemy stands in it, so that's why I kind of said damage over time. A la Anubis's Grasping Hands. Hell, anything Anubis does actually does ticks of damage in succession as he's doing the ability. Poseidon's Whirlpool, and of course I don't mean Anubis's Wrap, that doesn't do any damage, just stuns. But Poseidon's Whirlpool, things like that, which it would be better to get Shoes of Focus and then a Spear of the Magus, and I'll just show you the Spear of the Magus real quick. Right here. Spear of the Magus. Passive. Enemies hit by your damaging abilities have their magical protection reduced by 10 and an additional 10% for 5 seconds, maximum 2 stacks. It's really, really good on gods who have ticking abilities like Poseidon and Anubis, like I said. And a lot of mages have abilities like that, so it's better to just get Shoes of Focus and Spear of the Magus. But I'll go into items you build after boots later because it's all about counter building and all sorts of stuff, and I'll have to explain that. Let's go back to the movements. Now, boots, nobody really builds anymore because Before, Boots of Celerity would give you the cooldown reduction, and they were just good because they made you move fast at the same time. But with the tier shift, like the tier breaking aparting thing on the 3rd level of shoes and boots and items in general, they've kind of fallen off. Boots of Celerity give you 95 health and 95 mana, and 22% speed while in combat, plus 35% speed while out of combat. Speed does not stack with other boots. And then the second one is Midas Boots, which is the same health and mana, but you get a passive gold per 5. Nobody really picks Midas Boots or Boots of Celerity up because the other shoes and Tabi and Greaves are just so much better for all the other roles. So now you know what each shoe or boot or Tabi or Greaves does. You need to figure out what god you're playing and how you want to play them. Now, you may be thinking, well, what items should I buy for what god? Well, let's go through the 5 free gods that are always free, and I'll tell you how you should start them. Let's say Neath. Let's say you're playing Neath. Well, since you're going either into the left or right lane, depending on what you're doing, you probably want to go to pick up a Death's Toll, rank 1 Tabi, and since you have 100 gold left, a health potion and a mana potion. If you are playing Odin, since you're a low level and you're like, well, I don't know how to play the game and everything, nobody on your team is probably jungling unless they're a smurf, and you probably won't have to solo lane. So I'm going to assume you're not solo laning and you're supporting / tanking for someone else. What you want to pick up: Mark of the Vanguard, Tabi, boom, a healing and mana potion. If you are watching this and you're like, well, what would I pick if I am solo laning? Well, what you would pick up if you were solo laning is Mark of the Vanguard, Hand of the Gods, level 1. So, level 1 Hand of the Gods. Some other active item, most likely either a Creeping Curse or not a meditation, because that's just wasting spot, or you could just buy the Hand of the God and then buy a bunch of healing and mana potions. That's what you would get if solo laning. And who else is free? Ra, for some reason the fucking auto buy gives you a Mark of the Vanguard. That's not what you want at all. If you're going into either the left or right lane as a support to heal, or just, you aren't confident in going mid lane, then you would actually just forego a starting item in general and get level 2 shoes and buy 3 potions, 2 healing, 1 mana. If you are going mid, you would get a Vampiric Shroud, level 1 shoes, and then a healing and mana potion. Ymir would most likely build a pseudo solo lane build because you're going to want to get a blink really early on. So, starter item, Mark of the Vanguard, most likely blink level 1, and then since you can't afford Greaves after that because they are 600 and you just spent 1050 on your active item and the Mark of the Vanguard, you would get potions after that. That way you can blink in on the enemy, stun them, and have your carry do work on them. Just, waste abilities, hurt them, get some good poke. But you don't want to blink in too early because then the minions might kill you. Or too late because then you might not be able to blink. But I'll explain blink and how to use it. Blink is an item that lets you teleport. Very short distance, and you have to be out of combat to use it. The first level of blink is a 180-second cooldown, so you better know what you're doing or you're not going to be able to use it for a very long time. So you might want to forego blink, especially if you don't know how to use it correctly, and just get Mark of the Vanguard, Greaves, 2 potions, just to be safe. That's a safe build and not so much a I know what I'm doing as Ymir build. And the last god was Poseidon. Poseidon usually always goes in the mid lane because he's very good in the mid lane. Would be Vampiric Shroud, level 1 shoes and 2 potions, one of each, because Poseidon's Lane Clear is very good. Now, these are all just starting builds, and I will go into more of item deviation and counter building and all sorts of stuff in the next videos. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, press that like button, and if you really enjoyed it and want more tips on how to build gods, how you pick what items and all that stuff, I will be continuing this series, and you should subscribe so you get all that information. I hope you have an awesome day, and I'll see you in the next video.